and it is Wednesday. How has your day been? I know it's a little later from me today, getting to this devotional, but I wanted to do this. I think this has just been a fantastic uh, journey so far. We've been into this a couple of weeks. We've been into the book about 3 days, but we've been talking about God Speaks for a couple weeks now. It has been fantastic. A lot of great feedback. Had a great discussion about this at lunch today with Jesus and Tacos over at Blanquita's. Blanquita's a great place to eat, and they're so gracious. They've been gracious hosts for us in our Bible study. But we had a great discussion about God Speaks today at Jesus and Tacos at Blanquita's. We are in day 3 of God Speaks, and when we talk about the book, we're talking about this devotional book by Allison and Zach Zender. By the way, I will upload. I know if you go over to St. Paul Lutheran Church in Harlingen's page, they've already got this next week's video up. So we'll try and get ours because Zach's got a couple of really cool videos as well about the series, and we'll try and get that up on the Facebook page in good time. Anyway, today is day 3. Talking about God Speaks, we're talking about the Bible being profitable for teaching. And the question always comes up, well, what is it teaching us? And there are good ways and bad ways to answer that question. Today, though, we're looking at, why am I here? The Bible does talk about this. What's our purpose? Why are we here? And then the subsequent question is, what for? And so these are purpose questions. And of course, we all ask these questions. For a lot of us, we've been asking these questions most of our lives, and every once in a while, life stops, and then you start asking that question once again. It is an important question. In fact, these days, this is 2026, the current generation, their answer for some of these things, it's why we're doing what we do at the table. Springtide Research Institute, Zach talks about this in God Speaks here, but the Springtide Research Institute has been tracking the Gen Zers for a long time now, and they found this about the Gen Zers. 40%, at least 40% of Gen Zers have said at one time or another they don't feel like their life has meaning or purpose. When I hear a statistic like that, I know it's okay. Why is that? I want to know what's causing that, and of course, there are all sorts of reasons for that. And this is the generation that went through COVID, and that's got all of its own ramifications. But 40%, and the number's been steadily climbing too. It used to be around 24%, now it's about 40%. Why is that? Why do Gen Zers feel like there's no meaning or purpose? And then when I also hear that, I think, oh man, what a golden opportunity to talk about the gospel. The purpose problem comes up, and I'm not meaning to single out Gen Zers at this point, because this is true of all of us. The purpose problem shows up because we look for purpose in all the wrong places. We do. And the Bible is clear about that. From the very beginning, we've been looking for purpose in all the wrong places. In fact, at the very beginning, the very opening scenes of the human race, with our first parents, Adam and Eve, they were looking for purpose in all the wrong places, and it's been true ever since. But we look for purpose, and again, we're taught to look for purpose in some of these things, but by our culture. A culture has its own voice, has its own narrative, has its own alternatives to what purpose is for our lives. And those voices are telling us things like, you find your purpose in what you can do, what your achievements are, what your status is, what pecking, where you find yourself in the pecking order. What kind of family do you have? What kind of approval do you have? What kind of control? Oh, there's a biggie. You find your purpose in control. That shows up in all sorts of ways. Find your purpose in a relationship. And as important as family and relationships are, is that giving me purpose? Because here's the funny little thing. Zach he doesn't use this word, but it is here in this chapter today, day number 3. Where you're looking for purpose and this whole question of purpose, identity is sitting right there next to it. Because identity and purpose are intertwined. They're, I wouldn't say they're necessarily the same, but they are interrelated to the point where it's hard to pull them apart. Because if you find your purpose in what you're doing, well, you're probably going to find your identity in what you're doing, your vocation. If you find your purposes in living for family, and that is your purpose in life, or that relationship, you can probably start to ask a question about identity. And pretty soon, if my purpose for living is the other person, the relationship I have, I'm finding my identity there too, as well. So we're given these alternative voices for purpose, and then the scriptures show up. Zach points out, you talk about where we're looking for purpose. The verse they use today is a good one because it is part of creating all sorts of conversations. Jeremiah 29:11. Some of you, if you're in the Christian world, you've seen this verse, you've heard this verse, you've seen it on plaques, you see it in memes, you see it on posters. Every May and June, somewhere along the way, you're going to see this verse because the graduates all use this verse. And they're talking about their hopes and their dreams and their plans. Jeremiah 29:11 is where God is talking to exiles in Babylon. And he says, I know the plans I have for you. In fact, I'm going to read it straight from Zach's book here. I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. And boy, doesn't that sound like every graduate needs to hear that. That God's got a great plan for them. He's got a hope and a future for them. He's got dreams for them. But it's all coming through our lens. We forget what I said just a couple minutes ago. This verse was given to exiles in Babylon. And God has just gotten done telling them that you're going to be there a while. You see, the false narrative for them, the fake news that had been given to them is they had been taken into exile. They had been carted off. They had been transported hundreds of miles away from everything they knew, transplanted into a new environment, a new culture, a language they don't know, cities they don't know, homes they don't know. They're in a context that they know nothing about. And there are people saying, hey, it's going to be over. God's going to send us back real soon. Don't unpack your suitcases. Just keep your room there at the Holiday Inn. And before you know it, we're going to be back in Jerusalem. Everything's going to be okay. God sends Jeremiah and says, no, that's not what I said. You're going to be there a while. And so, Jeremiah 29:7 is seek the peace of the city. You are going to be there long enough. You build your homes. You go get jobs. You raise a family. In fact, you marry your children. You marry your grandchildren. That's how long you're going to be here. You plan your weddings. You plan your graduations. You buy burial plots because some of you aren't going to last that long. We're not going back to Jerusalem anytime soon. And he follows that up with, I got plans for you. I've got a hope and a future for you. And what's interesting is, what I just said is exactly right. That hope, that future, that's right there in Babylon. That's a place they don't like. They don't want to be there. Culture they don't know. Language they don't speak. You're going to be there a while. And this hope in the future, some of them aren't even going to live long enough. There is going to be a generation that's going to go back to Jerusalem. They're not going to live long enough to see it. So what's their hope and what's their future? What kind of promise is that? Well, if we keep reading, we find out that hope and the future and the dreams, God's talking about something different. He's talking about the coming Messiah that's still a few hundred years away. He's talking about the new creation. He's talking about what he plans, what he wants to do for his people, his plans for them. Their hope and their future lies in somebody else, somebody that's coming. So what are God's plans? So when we talk about purpose, those plans has nothing to do with materialism, has nothing to do with material success, has nothing to do with our personal dreams. has nothing to do with God promising smooth sailing or even success, depending on what that's another thing. What do we say is success? God is not promising your best life now. And I say that on purpose. He's not promising that. So, what's your purpose? Why are we here? Well, it's in 2 Timothy. Paul alludes to it, but you find it other places. You're here to be loved. That's your purpose. Your purpose is to be loved. Your purpose is to be forgiven. Out of that identity of being loved, the identity of being forgiven, the identity of being a child of the King, you find your purpose. Your purpose is you were created for Jesus to love you. Have you ever thought about that? You were created so that Jesus could give you grace, so that Jesus could make you his own, so that Jesus could unconditionally love you. Now, that's something we're not taught. You know, it's kind of funny. We go to some of the other what looks like purpose statements that we exist, and we're taught. The Westminster Catechism is a famous catechism. It's off the Westminster Confession. And generations of people have been told that their purpose is to glorify God and enjoy him forever. But that's not the gospel. We do not find our purpose in law. We find our purpose, we find our identity in the gospel. You see, identity and purpose are all flipped on its head. The law is flipped on its head. Our purpose isn't to love. Our purpose is to be loved. And then having been loved, we pass that love on to others. So you want to start thinking about, how is this important for the next guy? How is this important for my neighbor? We are loved we are loved to love. I mean, that's 1 John 4:19. We love because he first loved us. But all of ethics is that. We grace people because we've first been graced. You see, out of all the forgiveness, and that's Luke 7, out of all the forgiveness we're given, we forgive. Out of the love that we're given, we give love. So our identity, we're loved. Our purpose is to be loved by Jesus. Why are we here? We are here to be loved so that, and this is where 2 Timothy comes in, so that we can love our neighbor. And that's where we find our purpose. Why are we here? Why are we here? We're here to be loved. And out of that love our neighbor. So, that's our conversation at the table. Great God Speaks chapter today. It was awesome. Day number 3. I can't wait for tomorrow. If you want this book, I've already had people stopping by today. You want this book, just stop by the office here. We'll give you one. And then join us. Tomorrow's day 4. It's never too late. Day 5, never too late to join us on this journey. God Speaks, 30-day challenge to read your Bible. And again, that's all part of this. The Bible, when I say your purpose is to be loved, we find that in the scriptures. We find that in the Bible. The Bible tells us. And why is this important? Is this important for instructions? Yeah, I mean, it gives us instructions. But the most important thing is, how would you know that you're loved? Deeply. No? The Word, the preached Word, sacraments. That's why Sunday's important. Sunday, we are reminded every Sunday for 1 hour how much we are loved. That's our conversation at the table. Join us again. We'll do this again tomorrow. It'll be day 4. God Speaks. Let's have some conversation too on Facebook, YouTube, where these videos are. Love to have some conversation with you. It's already been very, very good. Like I said, had a great conversation today at Jesus and Tacos. We're going to continue doing this. And so I encourage you, join us in our journey on why reading the Bible is important. Our conversations at the table, they occur right here on Facebook and YouTube. And until next time, remember this. We've been talking about it already, but I always want to remind you before we sign off that you are unstoppably and unconditionally and absolutely loved.